You're listening to the Business Communicators.
Thomas, I know we're not a sports podcast, but we're going to talk a little sports here. LIV Golf, if you're not familiar, has been in the news quite a bit, and not just on ESPN, Sports Center, but it's been international news. And if you're not familiar with LIV Golf, here's just a little summary from Quartz. It says the battle lines in golf have been drawn, pitting the PGA Tour against some of its biggest stars who had decided to join the LIV Golf Tour. LIV Golf Investments, which is backed by the Saudi Public Investment Fund, its majority shareholder, was launched last year with golf legend Greg Norman as its chief executive officer. PIF recently pledged a $2 billion investment to expand the organization's efforts internationally. And so far, 48 golfers involved. Phil Mickelson paid more than $200 million. Dustin Johnson paid more than $125 million. There are rumors that LIV tried to poach Tiger Woods at a cost nearing $1 billion. So when you look at this, the money in LIV Golf is insane. And now this week, we've seen the PGA Tour basically come out and suspend anyone who has joined LIV Golf or is considering joining LIV Golf in the future. So from a communication standpoint, we're seeing a very hostile situation between the two organizations go back and forth, playing out in the public spotlight. I'm just curious on your takes.
I think part of the challenge comes in is who's backing it, and we are lucky that we live in a freedom of speech place. Other places have come out saying, their major sponsors come out saying, no, we don't support that. And I think I can't tell if it being in the media is because of PGA trying to spotlight that this organization is not good because it is brought to by XYZ. We have to remember that the PGA is the tour, but it doesn't necessarily control some of the majors, for lack of a better statement. The Masters is not a PGA group. So if these players want to play in the Masters, they probably still can. The U.S. Open, they can qualify and play in the U.S. Open. The British Open, they can still qualify and play in the British Open. Personally, I think that there might be too much golf. It might be going the way of my personal take on basketball, is there are too many games. Nobody really starts watching. I say nobody. I don't personally start watching until towards the end of the season, to where there's playoff implications or the majors. I can see golf going the same route, and PGA, I feel right now, is trying to protect the delusion of their brand and another competitor. I'm all for the players. Hey, there's not a tournament this weekend. The LIV's having a tournament. I can get paid playing there. I'm going there.
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult situation because it is backed by Saudi Arabia, and we know the human rights violations, war crimes that have gone on with that regime. But I don't think it's too dissimilar from what we've seen in European soccer, what we've seen in Formula One, what we see with Fortune 500 companies investing in China. It's a similar situation, and it's one that golf hasn't really experienced before. And you were right about these players, they could still play in those big tournaments. The only major they can't play in is the PGA. But if you look at the money that's coming in, it's obscene. Tiger Woods previously was the record holder for tournament earnings. So we're not talking like income generated from sponsorships, but tournament earnings at like 115 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like two guys were paid more than that. Phil Mickelson double that for just signing up for it. And here's the interesting part, though. Sponsorships, because of the association with the Saudis, are actually pulling out. Rocket Mortgage, RBC has backed out. Amstel, KPMG, Workday, they all dropped Phil Mickelson. Callaway put its sponsorship of Phil Mickelson on pause. UPS ended its sponsorship with Lee Westwood. And we've seen so many other groups doing this. And it's really interesting to see what the PGA Tour is doing. Kevin van Valkenburg, who is a senior writer for ESPN. He had a thread on Thursday, June 9th, just kind of talking about this. And he said, this is probably a thread meant for non-golf or casual fans and diehards, but here it goes. And he kind of credits the PGA Tour's turnaround in the 1970s to Dean Beman. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He was the second PGA commissioner in history. And basically, like at that point, nobody watched the PGA Tour. And it was very expensive to broadcast golf compared to like football or baseball because you need more cameras, more crew, everything like that. And the tax burden for the PGA at the time was very, very high. And so he was trying to make it a nonprofit, and he was trying to get them like a 501c6 status. It was going to be a long process, a lot of legal fees. And so he basically started another organization, which I guess is now the PGA, and got the tax status in 60 days. And so most people don't know this, but the PGA is a nonprofit. And with nonprofits, they have donated, I think, over $2 billion to charity since the 70s and 80s. So with a lot of money, it's gone a lot of good. Like we look here in Houston, a lot of the funding goes to like STEM education and things like that. So it's great what the PGA is doing. But the problem is for the players is that it limits their prize pools, because if you are a nonprofit, there's a limit on what you can pay. I mean, you're going to have overhead, and the overhead cost is very high for the PGA, but there's limits in terms of purses. So the prize pool in LIV Golf, because they don't care if they make money or not. Like this is sort of a goodwill tour for the Saudi government, I think, trying to use sports as a brand ambassador. So they're able to pay these obscene prices to players. And it's really fascinating to me.
Other nonprofits, the NFL's nonprofit, and yet you have players.
So they were a nonprofit until just recently. Same with Major League Baseball. I believe the yeah, okay. So baseball gave up their nonprofit status in 2007, and the NFL gave it up in 2015.
Yeah, but I see this organization paying what we feel exorbitant amounts of money to offset the sponsors pulling out. I would think that over time, yes, they do want to make money on it. Yes, they do want to do all these other things, and it's expensive to play golf. It's expensive to watch golf. It's expensive to host a tournament. It's an expensive sport all the way around. I see what they're doing very similar to what The Athletic, a reporting platform. We're going to go out and we're going to hire the best writers. We're going to pay them double, triple, quadruple what they're making to come write for us. And they've got really good writers. They've got really good readership, and they've got really good things. It'll be interesting.
And New York Times is trying to acquire them as well.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if the business model plays out over the next 10, 15, 20 years from now. From there, is it a PR play by the Saudi government? Possibly. Is it some business people wanting to see a return on their investment at some point in time? Probably. And so over the time, I don't fault the players for chasing money. There's no cut line. Everybody who plays is going to get paid. The PGA, you can travel to a tournament, pay the entry fees, or have your sponsor pay the entry fees. And at the end of the day, after you pay your caddy and you pay your hotel room bill and you pay your food bill, you paid to be there if you miss a cut.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't see that about golf. They see all these big winners like Rory McIlroy, Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, Tiger Woods making all this money. But that's a very small portion. That's not the majority of the PGA or the Korn Ferry Tour or things like that. But Van Valkenburg concluded with this in a series of tweets. He said, "What does this mean for the future of golf? It likely means the PGA Tour is going to need to undergo some sort of serious reinvention or retooling at the very least. Golfers love to talk about being charitable, and some of it's certainly genuine, but oil money runs the world." And I thought that was a really interesting thread. And I do think the PGA is going to be forced to adapt, just like every business and company is going to be forced to adapt. But Thomas, I will close with this. I think the one interesting thing to me is the press conferences that took place at the start of the tournament. Generally you'll have like a Golf Digest, ESPN, Sports Illustrated there. ABC News, all these major news outlets were there asking questions to the players. And mostly they're asked about how do you feel about this course? How do you feel about this, the conditions, that kind of thing. Those weren't the questions they were getting this week in London. So I'm going to play a quick clip here. It's about 50 seconds, and then we'll get into it after.
How is that journey helping the women oppressed in Saudi Arabia, the migrant groups, their rights violated, the LGBTQ individuals who are criminalized, the families of the 81 men who were executed in March, and those being bombed in Yemen?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the ability to be able to have that conversation with you. I think as golfers, if we tried to cure, geopolitical situations in every country in the world that we play golf in, we wouldn't play a lot of golf. It's a really hard question to answer. We're just here to focus on the golf and kind of, what it does globally for the role models that these guys are and that we are. And that's a really hard question to get into.
Tough questions, and it's not the typical ones that you get in front of a before a golf tournament. Those are the line of questionings they're going to get as players continue to move into the LIV Golf. And interestingly enough, they hired Ari Flesher to be the communication shop. And if you're not familiar with him, he was spokesperson during the Bush administration. So media training is something that's incredibly important for these PGA players now.
Two things came to mind. One is the PGA launching a PR campaign, feeding those questions on purpose to the players. Cynical in the back of my mind, or are they trying to sell papers with those lines of questions? And two, media training, because you don't know what question you're going to get asked across the board.
Mm-hmm.
In a formal press setting, or just walking in the crowd, going to dinner, anything along those lines, everybody's looking for a soundbite.
Oh, 100%. There was a kind of a funny tweet that was going around. So if you're not familiar with Patrick Reed, he is from San Antonio, Texas. I think he lives in Spring, Texas now, which is just outside of Houston. He won the 2018 Masters tournament. He went to school at Georgia. He's a guy that is not well liked on the PGA Tour. He just rubs people the wrong way. And there was a funny political cartoon that went out and it said how the negotiation actually took place between Patrick Reed going to the LIV Tour. And it shows a cartoon person with a handful of cash putting it underneath the table to the LIV Golf tournament, and on the back of the guy's shirt it says PGA Tour. Here, please take them. We don't want them. So at least there's some humor coming from it.
I just think of the ultimate PGA rivalry, DeChambeau and
DeChambeau, Bryson, and
Brooks, and going back to it, when PGA's viewership going up because of that, kind of how many people can watch CNN live broadcast the Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial?
Yeah.
You've been listening to The Business Communicators.